Hello, this is just a quickie demo tour thing of the Metal Slug video I just finished. I figured I would kind of show how I put the whole thing together with the 2D and 3D. The reason I decided to from the jump um, was basically because the whole point is I wanted to do something that was like medium polished but still easy enough to do, so that I didn't spend a lot of time bogged down on just one little silly joke. And I realized if I want uh, a 3D background, that might be a good way to easily polish some stuff up. And my first reaction is like, oh, well, I don't want to do a whole bunch of modeling. One, I forgot that I have a whole bunch of default buildings, little like simple low poly buildings that I could have used. Just straight forgot that I have those. But the other thing is, I realized if I was drawing this background, oh here, and let me blow up the finished product. If I was just gonna draw this anyway, I would probably just do the background as simple little shapes. So if I'm gonna do it in 3D, why don't I just do the background in simple little shapes in 3D? So the only things I actually modeled were this building, which you can see is not elaborate, and this box, which is also not terribly elaborate. Everything else is just a cube with a bevel on it, and that gets you there. Cubes with a bevel on it, and then like a ground and some little lumps to sort of look like hills. Um, Sorry, looking for my little script so I don't get quite as rambly as I have my previous demos. Um, but yeah, like I said, the whole environment just really simple. These are actually all one shader. Uh, I have this shader set up so that if I can grab the right thing, um, every single one of these cubes gets a random color based on this color ramp, using object info random. Uh, exactly what it sounds like. Each object is assigned a random value. Um, I use a map range node to set those values to be between this number and that number, and then the color ramp basically says like here's 0, here's 1, and just assigns it a number on there. A nice thing about the map range node is you can set the number of steps. So you see here I've got it set to 2 steps, which means there's only ever going to be 3 colors. The number it thinks of as, or it's 0, it's 0.5, and it's 1. If I turn this number up, you can see that I increase the number of possible value outcomes. And then, like I said, that just goes into a color ramp, and then that sets the color of just like the most literally default shader in Blender. So that way I don't have to go around coloring every single one of these. This little run that this little row of buildings that she runs behind, built exactly like you would probably imagine. I just made an array modifier, made a whole bunch of them, applied it, separated them all out, and just rotated them all slightly. But again, it's like I said in the text post, mostly on something this simple, especially something this simple that's just going to get posted on social media, people are just going to watch it 1, 2, maybe 3 times. And for the most important thing is just getting across the idea quickly and just kind of getting the vibe. Colors and shapes will get you the vibe. So if I had done this more elaborately, if I had modeled out every single one of these buildings, the average viewer would not get as much out of me putting in all that detail as I would have to spend putting that detail in, if that makes sense. I'd basically be spending X amount of X amount of effort, and the most enjoyment, the most return in terms of enjoyment that most people would get out of that would be like 0.3 of X. So again, just maximizing my time. This is just a simple little video for a really stupid joke to a movie that I don't want to think about how many of the people who see this video are probably too young to remember, or maybe even got born after. let's talk about my camera so I don't get too wistful about that. I have my own little bespoke camera rig that I like. In fact, I can just show you in my default file. I just got it like equipped in there. It's all, and this is hardly anything I invented. This is super basic. Here's the actual camera. That camera is parented to a master controller, just like an empty. And there is also the camera pointer. This camera has a damped track constraint, which means it's always going to look at this empty that I just call the pointer. So you can watch it looking around. Here, you know what? If I get my cube back, I can show you the camera's view. Sorry. That's the wrong one. Vertical split. Boom. All right. So here's the actual camera's view. So you'll see I move this pointer back and forth. See the camera turning. And if I don't move the pointer and I move the actual camera, oh my gosh, you can see that. These two would be a little awkward because if I wanted to pan, I would have to make sure that I animate them both consistently with each other. Or since the pointer, is also parented to the master, that means if I want to pan, all I have to do is move the master. This lets me do some nice little delta moves if I want to like move this way and then move the camera that way. You can get some like kind of cool moves out of it. It just makes things really simple. It's a good setup. It's in my default file for a reason. So I've already got that set up. And let's watch here. In fact, you can even see like how far away it is from everything else. Here we can watch. I've got my final result here in the upper right. If you want to watch how the camera and all the little objects bop around in the scene as it goes.
Leave her alone, you son of a bitch! Lisa, I treasure your friendship.
Oh yeah, this is a fun thing. So I wanted to have this shadow move in this path that like leads your eye to where it's going to end up landing. The way I ended up doing that is I've got my little, again, super simple object to be the grenade that she fires. I just made it real big so it's casting a shadow over the thing. You can watch it shrink. You can see what it's doing here and the result from there. Again, this is of course not the actual path the bullet would follow, but this is how I would draw that shadow just for clarity. Like I said, I wanted to like lead your eye here so that, you know, it doesn't come out of nowhere when it hits. And then you see here, I've got it just out of frame, just wherever the camera's not going to see it. And then boop, it warps in, got that nice distorted shape for kind of a smear. Bring it in literally just for 2 frames, and then kaboom. And then this sprite of the explosion is actually hanging out underneath the scene the entire time until I need it. Boop. Oh, and then speaking of lighting, the way I've got the lighting set up is all of this like really harsh explosion lighting is 2 little point lights. This is a red one. This is a yellow one, maybe a white one. Yeah, red one and a white one. Right now they're just turned off, and then when I need them, turn them on. Boom. I move the red one in space a little bit so that there is a small, you can see the shadow expands out a little bit. Oh, you know what? Maybe I took that out. Maybe that might have been an earlier drafts, but that way you get the cool lighting with everything else. The dark sky is just changing the world shader, basically just changing the color of the skybox, which you can just keyframe like everything else. Let's talk about, going back to the camera, let's talk about how I've got the grease pencil objects set up. Again, grease pencil objects, I described them before as kind of like just kind of like flash files in 3 dimensions, essentially. There's a little more to it than that, but functionally that gives you the idea. I've got 2 of them. I've only have 2 of them in this scene. One of them is Ari here, and the other one is Fio and the guy she's shooting at. they're both kind of put together slightly differently. Ares is really simple. It's literally just an object parented to the camera. So wherever the camera goes, it follows around, and that way I can just draw on it and draw whatever I want. And then you can see the teleport. That's just me whipping the. All I have to do, move the master control around, and then you see it's still got kind of like roughly that same shape to it. But here's the panning I'm talking about. When as I move it backwards, all I'm doing is just moving this on one axis. This keeps its kind of tilted angle. It's almost sort of like if you think of a camera rig in real life, this would be the like little car that the camera's sitting on, and then here's the camera with the cameraman sitting in the little sidecar. But again, you can see that, you know, her grease pencil object, it's like tilted at a weird angle. She's kind of like Tokyo drifting as she's running. And that's just because like it's just locked in place relative to the camera. I don't think this has any movement. Nope. Yeah, this has like no real transformation. Oh, the one thing I do have, I have this small script set up in, and again, this is a default file thing. I have this small script set up so that whatever the zoom of the camera is, this grease pencil object will scale accordingly. So if you watch, here, in fact, here's a good compare and contrast. Watch the grease pencil object here in the actual scene, and then watch its size in the camera's view. Grabbing the camera, gonna zoom it in. All right, so and then as I zoom the camera in, let me uncheck this so I don't actually ruin my file. Notice look up here in the upper right. You notice as I zoom in, she doesn't zoom in. And the reason is, you can watch it changing size on the other side, is because it's scaling automatically relative to the zoom of the camera. This is something I wanted to do for a long time, and I'm not actually a big math guy, and thankfully Blender is so node heavy, and it's constructed in such a way that unless you want to do a whole bunch of your own scripting and everything like that, you don't really need to know it. This is set up with something called drivers, where this is basically the closest I come to doing like actual code or anything like that. And thankfully, like Blender, I can do a little tutorial about this some other time. Basically, I tell it, look at the camera, look at this, whatever, and then scale according to this formula, which not actually as elaborate a formula as it looks. It took me forever to realize, like, well, how do I get it so that's consistent and such a thing? It was like, I have to find out how cameras work in real life. And it was literally a case of all I had to do was just like take the camera's sensor size, again, emulated because it's all software, but take the sensor size and it's like divided by the focal length, or maybe the other way around. And that's all it is. And that way, this stays perfectly consistent with that. And then Blender has the transform and the delta transform. Delta transform is basically just like, and also you can use these just to make it a little easier if you ever have to do something a little more complex. I just keep it in the delta transform and then forget that it's ever there. A funny thing is this grease pencil object has the same thing, I think. So let me double check. But yeah, you can see it's growing and shrinking in size as well, just because they're both looking to the camera and seeing what its zoom is to determine its size. But anyway, so like I said, hers is just really simply set up. You can watch it bop all around the scene along with the camera as the camera is moving. The reason you can see her kind of zoom in along with it, since I said, you know, it keeps the relative size, and you know, she wouldn't zoom in. It's literally in the grease pencil object. I've just scaled up the lines essentially inside, so you can see that the object isn't really getting any bigger. It's just like the drawings themselves in the object are getting bigger. I don't know if that makes sense the way I described it, but someone out there knows what I mean. Then here's a little cheat where she teleports back so I can get another building as she cocks the gun. Lock the camera in place for this little move, and then back to pretty much the same spot we were at the beginning. Oh, you know what? Maybe not really. But, oh yeah, you know what? We're back to where we were in the zoom out. That's right. Yeah, actually, small, almost a little bit of a Hitchcock shot. That grease pencil object is still parented to the camera. It just doesn't have any drawings in it until I need it to have them. And then come back here, and then all the wackiness with the bullet. These ones are set up a little differently. Excuse me. Like I said, they stay in the same spot. They have kind of the same constraint that I talked about that keeps the camera pointed to the little, that keeps the camera facing my little like pointer here, except just the other way around. This object just stays facing the camera. And then you can see I kind of cheated a little bit because since it stays facing the camera in that way, that means it's going to twist and his foot is going to come out over the building. So I just kind of shove it back a little bit. Again, I'm not really super worried about what anything looks like except for through the camera lens. The other thing, because this is always pointed to the camera lens, like I can keep drawing in this one even while it's parented and zipping around, because when I'm working with a grease pencil object, Blender knows where those lines should go in 3D space because of like things that you set. In fact, if I go to draw mode, you can see right here, I've got, it draws the strokes at the object's origin. So like you can see right here, here's where the object quote unquote is in space, is that little dot. And then the orientation, the like basically the facing of all the lines that I draw is going to be relative to the view of the camera. And as long as I'm looking, or I'm sorry, relative to the view of whatever window I'm in. And as long as the window that I'm in while I'm drawing is the camera, then it all just stays flat. That kind of goes to hell if you're, or that works very, very well if the object is parented to the camera, because it's always like perfectly consistent. This is not going to be. It's, I've still got it set to like object and view and everything. I'm sorry, origin and view and everything. But because it's twisting around and it's like turning to make, like you can see it like, you can see it kind of like rotate as the camera moves. So I did all of this animation just in this view, just staring through, and so it stays all, it's just a big flat drawing and it stays all nice. But you can already see a little bit going wrong where like this gun's kind of shifting in space. And then it really went to hell when I get to this point. Like look at just the bizarre placement of all of the different lines. This is something I struggle with a lot on a couple of other times that I've done similar things. It's not lined up right, and then just me thinking in technical terms, I'm like, oh, that's signing me up for mistakes. That's going to be a problem later on. I got to make sure I fix that. I got to keep everything straight. Again, this was just supposed to be a simple little quick thing, so I forced myself not to worry about it. And the thing is, this doesn't actually really matter, because even though this looks all crazy from every other angle, I don't care about every other angle. I care about the angle from the camera. From the camera, it looks just fine. Spin it around, looks crazy, but I'm not going to go spinning it around. I'm just going to look at it through here. So this is a lesson I have to keep learning, where it's just like, no, it is not technically correct, but does it work? It's something that's something I've been saying to myself a lot lately, is whatever works wins, and this works. This is just a simple thing. I think first sketch to being finished, this was all of 3 days and just like 3 days of warm-ups basically. Yeah, you can even watch. I think it gets even worse as she like animates slightly. Not too bad, but, and the masking makes the like the shadows are on their own layer, and you can see how the shadows are also on a different plane from the body, and it just looks absolutely crazy. But again, looks fine from here, so no one cares. What else? Oh, the compositor. So I didn't do a ton of stuff in Blender's compositor for this one. I did a little bit, and it's mostly focused around color. Let me fire out a render real quick. So I didn't want, one of the reasons I usually don't work in color for like simple little things is just because making colors look good is a task. Like coming up with a good color scheme is a piece of homework you're going to have to do. And I want to do as little as possible. Thankfully, I'm stealing all of this from the Metal Slug games. They have really good color theory, so I can just pull all my colors from the game itself. So that task was already handled. I got that all taken care of. But even then, I want to unify it a little bit. I want to keep it a little bit consistent with the background. So I have this quickie little node set up, or basically all it does is it takes the I have two view layers here, where I've got, here's just the one that I work in, and then I have another view layer that is only the environment, just only the background layers and none of the characters or anything like that. So what this little node does is it takes, here, let me disconnect it. You can see probably. Just hit white. Is that going to make it look good? No, it's not. Just plug it back in. So what this does is it takes the background, blurs it really, really far, and then it takes just the color of that background and changes just the colors of this. Like it changes the color value of everything a little bit. So, and it's a pretty subtle effect, like, oh, and it depends on how you use it too. But like I use it very subtly because it looks really obvious here. In fact, if I turn off the blur, I think there's a specific shot where it's, you can kind of see it go. Let's see how obvious it is. Hold on. Blop, blop, bloop. Yeah, so if I turn off the blur, you can see how, you know, this building is like bisecting the guy. But you can see the effect that it has. In fact, if I could turn up the amount of it. So here's what it would look like if I was using it to its fullest extent. Like I said, it's just replacing all of the color. But if you do it just a little bit, it kind of helps bring everything together. Like it kind of places the characters inside the actual environment just a little bit better in a way that isn't even perfectly realistic. Again, like if I turn off the blur, you can see this guy probably shouldn't be colored by the building behind him. But with the blur all the way up, it doesn't really feel like that's what's happening. It's because you're getting that nice gradient from all the blurring. And just a little, like I said, very subtle effect, but not so unsubtle to make it worth doing. And this is something that I've already built, so this doesn't require any new work from me at all. Yeah, I built this a little while ago, just experimenting. So this is something I can literally just, like I said, this is just one little group node I've already assembled. So I just say, here's the background, here's the thing with the characters, bloody blue. The text is in a different scene. Blender lets you have more than one scene, which is essentially just more than one file, almost in one file. And this scene is literally just, this is something that's also in my default file. I usually use it just to leave notes for myself, but it's just a camera and some text. So like you can watch the text just like bop around, boop, and yeah, you can sort of, it's black on black, so you can't see it very well. And then I have this, again, node setup that I've already built for myself. It's in my default file. That just lets you drop the text from that scene in, place it however you want. Why aren't you showing up? Show up for me. Do what I tell you to do. There you go. And you can see I've already got these controls built for stuff like the shadows. I worry it's a little not super readable to have like yellow text. But I specifically wanted it to look like something from the 70s, specifically MASH, the like MASH credits or the MASH opening titles and everything like that. Another node setup that just puts my signature on stuff. And then this just turns the scene to black at the end for YouTube, because YouTube wants to put little preview thumbnails at the end of all the videos and it drives me up the wall. So just a little bit of extra something for the YouTube thing. Oh yeah, here's where you'll probably see a much, I actually have to turn the environment tone all the way off for the explosion because the effect would be so strong. Oh yeah, let me use the actual thing I'm talking about so you can see it. Think. Yeah, there's the effect. even at just like 0.1 or 0.2, you can see it kind of overpowers. So, oh, here's a little bonus thing. Um, there is a mannequin file I use. I've gotten a lot of use out of actually. I didn't make it, but it's from a channel called Vertex Arcade. He does a lot of like actually really cool fake 2D stuff in Blender, and he built this like base mannequin file, kind of like a character creator mannequin, that I get so much use out of. Like I had like her Aries like run pose that she had was like a little bit tricky, and I just wiggled it around, just got this as just like a kind of a basic shape. This gun I actually made for Fallout character that I have. It started out as a laser rifle. I just needed the shape just as a point frame reference, so I took the battery off the laser rifle, turned it into this like little Tommy gun grenade holder thing. But this is just left over from when I was doing my first initial sketching and everything. Not truly the position anyone would be in while they're running, but from the right angle, it sure does work. Here, let's compare and contrast. See if I can refine the angle that I drew it from. Be like, yeah, there we go. You can basically see it from there. And again, just a frame of reference, not like perfectly slavishly mapped out, but real useful. Anyway, that was just a quick tour of another one of my weird experiments, all in the sake of doing a shit post that, from reading a few comments, nobody remembers Team America these days, apparently. But I cannot blame the passage of time. Or I cannot blame myself on the passage of time. I don't know what I'm saying. Here's another one of my awkward goodbyes. Thank you for being a patron. I hope this was interesting.